Good day, everyone who is just starting to come into today's episode of CV and Caffeine. And the topic we will be discussing is the life story. What am I looking for? Why is it so important? Why do we even have to do it? Because it's so drawn out and it's such a long process. I think as leaders, we've all heard the complaints from both sides, from the people that have to go through the process and those of us that lead people through the process. So today I have with me two experts, Teri and Haro, and I'm going to turn it over to Teri to let her give some introduction of herself, her background, and then bounce it over to you, Haro. So Teri, take it away.
Hello, I'm Teri Brenkus and I'm in Las Vegas. And I joined KW in 1998. And back then, when I met Gary, he told us that we are glorified salespeople. We are not business people. And that was kind of shock because I was doing really well in my area at least and was earning over $1 million. However, I was working 80 hours a week. And he asked me, Teri, if you left your business for 3 months, what would happen to it? And I was thinking back, I can't even go to my brother's for Thanksgiving without bringing my fax machine. Back then, we used fax machines. And we just worked 80 hours a week, like I had said. And after learning the CV process, I went from working 80 hours a week to 20 hours a week and earning $3 million a year. So this material and this model, Gary's model, changed my life. And I stayed married because we were going to kill each other. I work with my husband, Rick, and we have a team. And today I own 4 market centers, and I maybe work a couple hours a week, if that, on the team. And most of my time is spending what I love to do, which is working with agents and helping them grow their team and their business.
Awesome. Haro, how about you? Give us a little of your interesting background.
Yeah, I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and as far as the business side of things goes, got one market center, got a team. I think we've sold somewhere around 3,300 houses at this point since 2010, and it's been a huge team, it's been a small team, and everything in between. It's kind of a smaller phase right now, and I don't know, my particular phase in life, I don't know if I'm going to recapture the largeness of the past. Um, we'll see. Uh, Also own a market center and spend very little time in that. We have an OP partner that operates that. And I'm really focused, honestly, currently on my health. I had a stroke 2 years ago, and also on my family. My kids are 17, or excuse me, well, fixing to be 18, but 17, 16, and 12. And for the first decade, maybe decade and a half of their lives, I was very busy in the work world. And now, honestly, through the principles that I was able to learn through CV, we were able to take a 9 month sabbatical. And been able to be a lot more present at home. And I'm going to be present at home for the foreseeable future. And at some point in the future, if I want to pick things back up business wise and spend more time there, I'll do that.
Awesome. So it sounds like both of you referenced this. The CV process is also leverage for the leaders, which is a great tool. And people just, if they've got their blinders on, they see this as, oh, it's just another step to hiring, oh, to ease the pain, which it's so much more than that. So my first question to both of you is, why is it so important? Why is the life story so important to you, to your organization, and to the individual you're taking through the process?
Well, I think it gives you their past, but it also shows the trajectory of where they're probably going. And it also has you bond with them at a very deep level, and it sets the stage for what I think is the most important part of the process before you hire someone, which is the motivational interview.
I would
Haro,
agree
your
with,
thoughts on the subject?
yeah, I'd agree with everything Terry said. For me, the thing that I realized and am successively continuing to realize is the importance of relationship. far beyond the money that can come from the business relationship, the relationship is key. And you were talking a little earlier about the length of the CV process. And I just always start the process with making sure that the candidate understands, hey, look, in my ideal world, we're working together for the next 20 years. That's not going to happen with everybody, but
Mhm.
let's say we just work together for 5 years and it's 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year or 48 weeks a year, whatever, for 5 years. That's 10,000 hours worth of time. Why don't we spend 20, 30, maybe even more time on the front end, really making sure that this is the right fit, not only for me, but for you. And the life story um, helps me understand if this is an appropriate position. Is like one of the things that was talked about with CV early on is you want to make sure it's the next logical step in their career trajectory. And for me, that's I wanted to make sure that I didn't put someone in a position that they were going to fail at because
Mhm.
that's not a loving thing to do to for someone that you care about. So as I get to know them in their life story, sometimes it is the right logical move. Other times it's not at all, and it becomes clear to me, and hopefully it becomes clear to them, so that the exit from the interview process isn't an emotionally draining one for either party.
Mhm. And you referenced that the relationship between you and the potential candidate. People get drawn to those that make them feel seen and heard, and that just again reinforces that connection when you understand them and they know that because it can
And
only lead to success in the future.
Yeah,
I tell them
I
that.
remember. Yeah, I remember interviewing a um, broker at the time, and she had been in the business. She was an older individual, and she said, "I haven't even told my husband these things." So you really build the relationship on a deep level, and right from the get-go, even before you hire him. So it's extremely important and extremely valuable to both of you and building your relationship.
Mhm.
And I'm hopefully modeling for them something that's going to actually, like, if they took this same approach to everyone they got into business with, or even just
Mhm.
got into a relationship with, how much richer would their life be? How much richer would my life be? So this is I mean, I think it's a beautiful part of the process. Um, yeah, I don't have an additional thing to say there.
And I think it level sets it too, right? Because when you understand somebody at that level, where they came from, what they went through, it helps you understand who they are today and potentially what um I can't think of the right word, but where they could go in the future. Um, so a lot of people would say, well, why do I have to go through the specific questions that it outlines for me in, the information? Why can't I just say to the candidate, tell me about yourself? What would you say to those people?
Well, I think it helps you understand how they think and what their perspective is of their life and what happened, what are your highs, what were the great things that occurred during that period of your life, what were the lows, and it also helps you understand if they're accountable for what happened in any way, or and they recognize that their fingerprints are on what happened in the lows. And then what did you learn? I love that question,
Yes.
because it really gives you an idea of, okay, what did they do? How did their life change from that event? And
Hmm.
what did they learn? And then you see the next event, and sometimes it's obviously they didn't learn from that last event, or that they are a little bit of a victim
Hmm.
and everything is happening to them, and that is not going to work in my world if they're blaming others for what occurred and not taking that responsibility. So it really helps you understand who this person is and how they view the world, and if they're accountable or if they're more of a victim-based mindset.
And it also gives you, to your point, it shows you patterns, right? Of how they behaved, how they reacted, the situations that they continue to get in, or was there a growth moment of the what did you learn? And you could then see how the trajectory of their decision making had changed during the process.
100%.
I also think it can show you their skill sets. So, in hearing what their life story of what they've done, where they've been, there may be something that is nuanced in their personality that wasn't really on their resume, but is a skill set that you're like, oh, okay, that's either interesting or it could help you move things along in this process.
For me, that's been helpful. It's not technically in the CV process, but I also invite people and I say, look, I'm going to ask you all these questions about your life. If you would like to ask me these questions about my life, I'm happy to share that. It's been a very few people over time, like I would say sub 10% or 5% even, that have taken me up on that. But I am very open to them, like us developing the relationship in that way.
I think that's great because having been on the being interviewed side many times through the CV process, I've never had that. And I don't know if I would take people up on it, but it does give you, as the candidate, more of an insight into the person that you're speaking with because you really don't. CV is really kind of one way as far as the questions go. Um, the feeling of being seen is both, it goes in both directions. But I think that's a great point to, you know, give that opportunity to somebody also.
And depending on the person, like, you're kind of setting up, putting them on the operating table and taking them apart, and it's fine. Like, that is, you know, both parties in some sense are taking a risk. There could be an argument to be made that the person making the pay, like signing the paycheck, is the one taking the bigger risk. But oftentimes people are leaving another career where they're settled and satisfied. In fact, like so many of the candidates you really want to be in business with are successful where they are right now, and not necessarily looking for a change. And so now you're talking to them about this career shift. Teri and I have both experienced it where people are, they're going to be moving from another state. Like there's big implications of this process. And I'm like, hey, look, I want you to feel completely comfortable. So if you're like, hey, Haro, I want to ask you the same questions, great, let's do it. Like I
Mhm.
don't I think one of the cautions that's helpful in this process, and it does get lengthy, is like don't be so attached to the outcome that or the process that you miss the forest for the trees, so to speak. Like the point is you're getting into a relationship with somebody, and some people maybe feel comfortable with the process as it is. Other people might be like, yeah, I would love to get to know you better, and yeah, I invite them into that.
During our little technical glitch, the conversation that Terry and I were talking about, or the question was, what are you truly looking for when you are asking them the questions? And Terry had a great opportunity to answer, but I want to give you that same opportunity, Haro. What kind of things are you listening for?
Yeah, I think Teri even gave us a preview in the beginning of the call, and I think the base two things that I'm looking for is what are the patterns from the past, and what's the trajectory for the future based on those patterns? Because generally people will continue on the same pathway they're on. So, like one of the things I'm looking for is have they been growing in authority and responsibility, particularly if I'm looking for a leadership position. Those are the main things that I'm looking for, and then like and I tell people anytime in the CB process, no one thing makes me hire a person or not hire a person. It's the big picture, it's the whole picture. So I'm looking for like, was there like a big gap? Okay, now explain the gap to me. What happened? What was your thinking around that? How did you make that decision? How did you come to that? So I'm just trying to, I mean, you're trying to learn their thought process. There's the thought process interview. But you're really trying to learn their thought process throughout the whole thing. Like, how does this person approach life and approach their decision making? Not so like I mean, it might be so I can disqualify them, but I want to know, I want to get in sync with how they think. because if we are going to work together, I need to be in sync with how they think, because that's how they're going to come to the conclusions that they're going to come to, and I need to be in tune with what that is, so I can, to the degree that it's appropriate, adjust my leadership style to that. What else am I looking for? I think this will be a good time to talk about. I learned early on, and it really has mapped really well. There's three types of talent out there. There's potential talent, there's emerging talent, and then there's proven talent. And then the pros and cons of each type. So potential is, they may not have a whole lot of work experience, but they had leadership experience in high school and college,
Hmm.
and they're a potential talent. Emerging talent is, someone that's been in the work world for a time and maybe has done a role that would feel like it's right before the role that you're looking to hire for. So that, like, their experience would map really well, but there's still going to be some learning, and there's going to be a learning curve. And then you've got proven talent, which tends to be the most expensive. And I would argue, I'm curious what Teri would say, the most risky, because I hired a very talented person a few years ago, biggest salary I've ever paid somebody, and they lasted about a year and a half, mostly because they were really accomplished and did something. They took a company from sub 1 million revenue to over 30 million in revenue. And what we discovered in the process of them working for me, with us wanting to do the same type of thing, was they didn't want to do that same level of hard work again.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I've had people with me. My director of ops has been with me almost 20 years, and the the process that we're going through with the life story really teaches you how they think and how they deal with adversity and how they solve problems, and I want to know how this person thinks so I can help them get what they want, and where do I need to maybe change their thinking and understand where they're coming from. And they really, by this point in the process, their guard is down, and we've really gotten to know one another, or I've gotten to know them, and they feel way more comfortable, and they're a lot more, I don't want to say they're dishonest in the beginning, but they're more vulnerable. They're more
Hmm.
open to share
They're
at
they're
this point.
guarded. They're guarded in the beginning.
Yeah. So even in the thought process interview, it's a little guarded, where this is it's them telling a story. It's how they think. It really dives deep into how someone thinks. And to me, that's the most important to help people get what they want, is where are they coming from and what are they thinking? And the trajectory of where they're going and the next step leads right. It's perfect, a perfect lead in into the motivational interview, which is really, that is my job to help them get there. So when you understand how someone thinks and how they approach things in their life and the stories they're making up, it really makes the relationship a 10. And the longer you're in relationship with someone, I mean, you really get to, okay, do I want to work with this person? And is it someone that I can help? Um, I think that the proven talent that you were talking about earlier is, yes, they're proven, but they a good fit in my world? And
Hmm.
I'm looking for someone that's accountable, that has grit, that is transparent, and that is a bottom line communicator. And the biggest thing is they take responsibility for the outcome. So um, it's a wonderful part of the process, and it's a vital part of the process.
I think also key is when you're writing it all down on the big flip charts, it's probably the first time that person has seen their life done like that. So they're going to have ahas of
Precious.
like, oh wow, and that could be good or bad for them. They could have seen a gradual progression of success, or they could see how their decision making has gone like this. And Haro, you referenced, when you're looking at someone's resume or information and they're young, they're out of high school, out of college, you need to dive into and ask more questions to find out what their patterns are, what their skill sets are, how they've grown, how they want to grow, because they don't have the traditional work experience in a professional environment. They may have, become a leader at the soda shop that they worked at. And that shows you that they can attain a leadership role, they're responsible. And so it's listening and hearing to all those different nuances.
Yes. And then looking for patterns.
Hmm.
Um, the younger they are, the more, and I
Oh no, not another
this.
technical issue. There you go.
I've heard Gary talk about this and Mark talk about this, but how much do you hear about their family background? Like,
Hmm.
obviously, from an HR perspective, you have to be really cautious on what you ask and what you don't ask. But I kind of leave it open to them. I say, hey, if there's anything from your childhood or growing up that really impacted and created who you are, or had a major influence in who you are, and if you'd like to talk about that, I would love to hear it. But up to you.
Right, right. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. I love getting to see the both of you. Is there any final words, mic drop moment you'd like to leave our audience with?
I think that this is a vital part of the process and learning how do they think, and it also can show you what their values are and how they
Mm.
approach life and how they what their view is of the world.
Yeah,
Thoughts from you?
I would say if you're tempted to skip any part of this lengthy process, this wouldn't be the one.
It's not the one.
Not the
Perfect.
one. I would pick other parts, but not this one.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us live today, and we will see you next time for our future episodes.